Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the CBT Podcast. I'm here with Ethan. I'm here with Rod, and today we're doing our second video in the positional rankings, which is shooting guard. This is a list that was a lot harder to make than point guards, for me at least. But before we get into our top 10, I want to give an honorable mention to my man, John Conchar, my good friend. Follow Conchar on Instagram. Follow John Conchar MVP. He's breaking out this season. Number 10 on my list, let's get straight into it, is a young guy, plays up in Minnesota, and that's Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, like you said, I don't know why this was so much harder to do than the point guards list, but I went back and forth a lot. At my number 10, I had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I went back and forth between him and Ant, but at the end of the day, I found it very hard to judge what he's done in OKC because they don't have anything besides him. His three-point shooting's been all over the place, but I think next season I'll know a lot more about how I feel about Shai.
Definitely agree. I have Shai at number 10 too. I feel like just overall he's been their best player. I mean, he got hurt for a little bit, but all in all, I feel like just Shai deserved that number 10 spot.
Yeah, it's hard to judge him because of how bad the Thunder are. So you kind of have to give and take, I suppose. At number 9, this might be a little disrespectful because this guy is a Hall of Famer, but he has been hurt lately and hasn't quite looked like his former self, and that's Klay Thompson.
Yeah, that's fair. I definitely went back and forth on Klay a lot, but like I just said, number 9, I had Anthony Edwards. If you just look at the counting stats, Shai definitely clears him, but I think I saw the improvement as far as his efficiency from year 1 to year 2, and in the playoffs, I saw him be their best player, which personally did a lot for me at putting him number 9.
I went a different route, and I'm putting CJ at number 9. I just feel like a guy that, I mean, he's been really solid for them and all that, but getting traded to the Pelicans, he kind of took a backseat role, especially playing alongside Brandon Ingram. And once Zion comes back, he's going to take another seat. So I just feel like he should be at that number 9 spot.
Okay. At my number 8, I had a guy that you had lower in the list. As we said, it's hard to judge him because of how dookie his team is, and that's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He just had the better counting stats than everyone, and I think his playmaking is better than both of the guys below him, so that's why I have him a little higher up.
That's fair. That's fair. At my number 8, I had CJ. I definitely think CJ lost some people, like Ethan said, his last few years in Portland. He didn't impress a lot. It was hard for him to grow as the number 2 behind Dame. But on the contrary to what Ethan said, I actually thought he took over the Pelicans when he got there. I think the 26 games he played in New Orleans was the best I've ever seen from CJ. I mean, it may be a little recency bias. It was a small sample size, but I saw him be their best player when he got there. So that did a lot for me.
For me at number 8, I actually have someone that you guys had lower, which is Anthony Edwards. I feel like he's just been great for that team, for the Timberwolves, and great for what they are building for, and especially coming out this season. I just feel like he deserves that number 8 spot.
Yeah, that's fair analysis. Number 7, I have a guy who, I agree with Rod. He did kind of take over the Pelicans since arriving there, and that's CJ McCollum. And something that people don't talk enough about with CJ is just how clutch of a player is, or of a player that he is. When he was in Portland, I mean, Dame obviously is known as probably the best clutch player in the NBA. I think that there was a real argument that there should have been a little bit of a question who's taking the shots down the stretch.
Yeah, I got into a little bit of hot water a few years ago when I said CJ was a better closer than Dame back in the Modern Warfare days, but that's besides the point. At my number 7, I had, this is tough, like I said, no easy selections here, but I had Jaylen Brown at number 7 because obviously, let's get the obvious things out the way. The last 2 years, he's been a completely different player. He's risen to a whole new level as a shot creator and as a tough shot maker, but I tried to look at this as a whole, and he still has a lot of flaws in his game with his efficiency, his obviously his ball handling, dribbling off the old foot. So he's a good scorer, he's a good defender, but he has a lot of room to grow, I believe.
At number 7, I actually have Klay Thompson. I think he's only so low just because of, coming off an injury. And I mean, whenever he was playing, it was a slow buildup for him. But Klay Thompson is just, Hall of Famer, overall great player. But again, that recency, just you got to put him a little bit lower than the rest of them.
Yeah, for sure. Number 6, I had to put my Celtics bias aside a little bit for this, especially after his finals. It's Jaylen Brown. I think something you said was that he's not efficient, which just isn't true. He shot 47. He shot 47% from the field throughout the regular season, which is very good for a guard of his caliber. And he is one of the best on-ball defenders in the NBA.
Yeah, that, like I said, he's very good. But this is where number 6, by the way, this is where I had Klay Thompson. Both of you made fair points. Last season was rough, but I tried to take into account his full body of work. And actually, post All-Star break in the regular season, he looked a lot like old Klay. I think he was averaging over 23.5 points per game. And in the first round, I believe, first and second round against the Nuggets and Grizzlies, he looked very good. Conference finals, he kind of fizzled out a little bit. But I'm thinking going into next season, I still have Klay very high up there.
Unlike you, JJ, I'm going to have Donovan Mitchell at my number 6.
Wow.
Yes.
That seems awful low. Why so low, if you don't mind me asking?
I mean, you said Jaylen Brown at that number 6, where I can see it because my 4 through 6 can be interchangeable, I feel like, because they're their own set of, like, they're their own tier of players. So I can see the interchange between them, but I just feel like Donovan Mitchell, he hasn't made it over that hump, whereas Jaylen Brown just made it over that hump. So for me, that
player
as the second best player, yes, but I just feel like Donovan Mitchell is at that 6.
Okay, at number 5, I have a great scorer, one of the most exciting players in the league to watch, and that is Zach Levine.
Yeah, that Donovan Mitchell one, that may be the greatest difference we see on this episode. But yeah, I also have Zach Levine at number 5. I think since he's got to Chicago, he's shown he's one of the best scorers in the league. Over the last 4 years, he's averaged 25.2 points and 4.5 assists a game. I mean, he's solidified as a scorer. He played through some injuries last year, but going into next year, I think the league should be on the lookout for Zach Levine.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. 5, Zach Levine. I mean, one of my favorite players just to watch. He's just there's just games where once he gets hot, he's one of those players that once he gets hot, he's just lights out, and it's he gets that 5. Sure.
Okay, now my number 4 and number 3, I went back and forth on a lot, but I ended up putting Donovan Mitchell at number 4, a player who's got one of the highest playoff career points per game in NBA history, which isn't talked about enough.
Yeah, my number 4 through number 2, to be honest, is completely interchangeable. This is all just based off my opinion. But at number 4, I actually had Bradley Beal. This was a guy who was coming off back-to-back 30-point seasons, which that just sounds ridiculous to say. But last season was very bad for Bradley Beal. I know he was injured, but to lose a guy like Russell Westbrook and for your production to drop as much as it did, that's a little unacceptable to me. His defense is still a big question mark. So I can't put him over these 2 guys I have above him just because of those reasons.
And this is where my Celtics fan comes in. I have Jaylen Brown at number 4. Like I said, 4 through 6 can be interchangeable, but I just had to put Jaylen Brown at that 4 just from what he's been able to accomplish, especially this season. So maybe there's some recency bias with it, but what he was able to do this season, how he's been, like, he's progressively getting better every season. I just feel like he deserves that spot.
Okay. All right. At number 3, I had a guy that you just mentioned, Rod. He had a bad year last year, but like you said, he's coming off back-to-back 30-point per game seasons. So I have to give him some credit for that, and that's Bradley Beal at the number 3 spot.
Yeah, Bradley Beal still obviously one of the league's best scorers. At my number 3, I have a guy who has proved me wrong in the past. I gave up on him before, and that's Devin Booker. Before I said he was just an inefficient scorer and he could not evolve his game to be a winner. But since Chris Paul, and I'll say a lot of the credit to Chris Paul, but Devin Booker has evolved his game. He's been a much better playmaker, a much better defender, much more efficient scorer. He's blown me away with what he's done in the playoffs, especially. So he's at my number 3.
At my number 3, same as JJ, all around great scorer. He was injured this season for part of it, but you just can't deny how great of a scorer he is. That goes to Bradley Beal.
Yeah, for sure. At my number 2 spot, I have a guy who was first team All-NBA this season, Devin Booker, obviously one of the most electric scorers in the league. He's really just improved as time has gone on. That's all I really have to say.
Yeah. Now, I've had this take for a long time, and I have stood by it because I think this guy has only proved me right over time. I have Donovan Mitchell at number 2, above Devin Booker, for the first time now in a long time, above Bradley Beal. I think since he's come into the league, nobody has had to shoulder as much of a load as Donovan Mitchell in his rookie year, out-dueling defending MVP Westbrook in the playoffs. Ever since then, having to carry the Jazz offense on his back. I mean, who's been the second best offensive player Donovan Mitchell has had? 40-year-old Mike Conley? That's laughable. And he still produces every year, gets them to 50 wins, gets them to the playoffs. That's enough for me to put him at number 2.
At my number 2, you just can't deny Devin Booker deserves that spot. I mean, best player on a championship run team, I guess.
A finals team.
Yeah, finals team. They haven't really won it yet, even though, they blew it. But we won't speak on that. But overall, I just feel like, he should be number 2.
Yeah. At my number 1, I think we all have the same number 1. A guy who some people might consider a point guard, but that's James Harden. I mean, obviously a former MVP. I think, as I said with Shay, his playmaking is so above and beyond anyone else on this list that I had no choice but to put him at number 1. And obviously he still has the scoring potential as he averaged like 35 points per game at his prime. So
yeah, don't let people tell you that Harden is washed, because he is still one of the most dangerous offensive weapons in the NBA. He can score 15 points and have a bad shooting night, but still have 15 assists and break a team's defense down. His first year in Brooklyn, people forget he was actually still an MVP candidate. It was just that he missed too many games early on in the season with the Rockets. And then last season, I think it's fair to say the officiating change may have hurt him more than any other player, not being able to draw as many fouls. But I think we'll definitely see a rejuvenated Harden going into next year.
Yeah, I definitely think just this season with the Brooklyn Nets overall has left a bad taste in people's mouths, especially how he left the Brooklyn Nets in a way. But, James Harden from the Rockets, I don't think that James Harden is gone. I think in the 76ers, it's just going to be a mix of first year in Brooklyn with James Harden and the Rockets. I think he's just going to come back better. But yeah, he's definitely my number 1.
all right, well, I think that's going to do it for today's video. I'm going to ask that you please subscribe, drop a like, leave a comment, leave your top 10 shooting guards list. Who do you think had some questionable takes in the future? Do you think Victor Wembanyama could be a shooting guard and make this list? Who knows? Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you guys in the next episode.